So I saw some negative criticism online about deaf interpreters, but truthfully, that means that there's a lot of people following online. It might be okay to think that way, but still spread positivity and promote the inclusion of deaf interpreters. There's different frames of reference, but it's important to remain positive at all times. Okay, so that addresses that. So again, talking about the deaf community and how a lot of hearing interpreters like to post ASL songs, signing to music online, and how that really encouraged a lot of debate about hearing people using ASL online. Nowadays, it's less so than it was back then. But it also raised a lot of questions about confidentiality and signing in public spaces. But again, to my point, why are hearing interpreters posting these videos? Who is it benefiting? It's important to weigh the consequences. All right. I notice now I'm on my third leg. Here we go. So, it's important to promote for hearing interpreters to help express the deaf interpreter experience and practice with them whenever possible. Now I'd like to open up the floor to questions about the process. I noticed there were no interruptions or pauses for clarification throughout the interpretation. So is that a good or a bad thing? I'm not quite sure, but I know sometimes myself while I'm signing and I don't see any hands raised, there might be a little bit of misinterpretation going on. So I do appreciate the honesty and transparency whenever people do raise their hands. It's totally fine. It's okay within the role of being an interpreter. In fact, it helps promote cohesion and 100% trust, transparency, and connection. So I'm not quite sure, but that's one sad thing that I do notice within the interpreting process. Now I'd like to open the floor up to questions. What's your favorite part about interpreting? Do you mean of interpreting or the work itself? I enjoy, really, nowadays I don't work legal as much anymore because I'm staff. I'm an employee at NGID. I still get job requests for freelance work almost every day, but I just reject it as it comes because I'm so busy. Every once in a while I see a neat opportunity or come up and I take a vacation day because really I do enjoy legal work. However, my favorite part has to be the ability to provide access. I mean, that's it. Sometimes you'll see me in the hospitals and I'll be having conflicts with the team about the interpreted situation not happening properly, and it might actually end up at HR as a big conflict. So that's something that continues to happen. We haven't quite found a solution for that yet, but I think it's okay. Really, sometimes I don't like what I see out there, but the year now is 2025 and things are changing. I appreciate being able to try to fight back and say something about the profession of deaf interpreting. What does the agency screening process look like for deaf interpreters? More specifically, the test. Are you asking to be a part of that agency, employed? Well, some agencies are stricter than others within their screening processes. They might require you to screen while working there, even while you're uncertified. I remember when I was working in a Philadelphia agency, they didn't care about certification. They would let you in if you passed the screening. But you're right. There needs to be a better screening process. And it's important to ask who is conducting the screening. It should be by another deaf person. But again, some agencies just don't have systems in place for that, while others do. Some have more advanced screening measures than others. For a lot of hearing agencies, I think the screening process is a lot more common, such as at KISS or LEC. At midnight interpreting services, is that right? Midnight communications. So agencies such as those. Yeah, you're right, the screening is an essential part of the process. And it's important to keep in mind to always be self-reflective during your work. Always be seeking external feedback. It doesn't matter how long you've been in the field, 1 year or 20 years, keep growing. Do you have any advice for us hearing interpreters as we enter the field and work with deaf interpreters? Why, yes, I do. To reiterate, well, I'm not sure if I mentioned it already, there are some deaf interpreters who are very skilled and have been working within the field for many years, or should I say hearing interpreters, interpreter correction. And it's important to note that it's not always about the hearing interpreter's individualism or skill. It's about the team setting. Sometimes there might be feelings of nervousness or anxiety, like people will look down on you if you have a deaf interpreter with you, or criticize your skills because you need a partner. And that might cause hearing interpreters to not want to work with a deaf interpreter. But it's important to be productive and increase your exposure to working with deaf interpreters, because quite frankly, sometimes you will struggle. There will be hard times and there will be improvements. But it's all about the attitude and it's all about the team. We need you. And we need the collaboration in order to promote effective interpretations. We'll do whatever we can to help. And in essence, don't listen to the negativity of people. Ever since I was little, people have viewed interpreters as catty people. This could be dramatic, or, well, this was my view, in fact, too. Dramatic, but when you get a lot of them in a room together, sometimes that happens. It's a little bit of an inside joke, but it's important to start out with the positive nature of interpreting, wanting and being willing to work with deaf interpreters. I know it's a little bit of a different experience, but you don't have to think of it as being stuck with them. Think of it as collaborating. I'm not quite sure. However you do it, find a team who you feel comfortable working with, who you won't feel criticized by, in order to create a joint partnership and promote effective cohesion. Remember, it's not about your own individual skills or, let's say, level of skill. It's about having multiple eyes, multiple heads working together in order to create a dynamic interpretation. And helping each other out. Even the deaf interpreter might ask for help sometimes. Really, we're all working together at the end of the day. That's the point. Anyways, enough. Any more questions? You interpreted during COVID, is that correct? What did your experience interpreting during COVID look like? Did you use a team interpreter, a hearing interpreter? What did that dynamics appear to be? Was it a lot more virtual or face-to-face? Expand more on your COVID experience. Yeah, it definitely was an interesting time. In the hospital, the number of people rapidly shrank. A lot of interpreters who weren't full-time were sent home, and the number of resources and facilities decreased. There's a lot more protective measures taking place, and we noticed that even though I had a full-time job there, a lot of other deaf people were still struggling to find work during that time. So I was quite willing to let them work at the hospital if I could. I do remember sometimes where I had to stand outside of the room and look through the glass window. And it was difficult because sometimes they'd have a tube going down their throat or have full protective gear on. And quite honestly, I felt a little bad for them. So that was definitely one of the difficulties of COVID, was that it was definitely a jarring experience. Sometimes the hospital members will give you an iPad for you to be able to sign through in order to keep social distancing, and they can stare up at from their hospital bed, but it really depends on the circumstance. It definitely was a challenge, I admit. Over time, COVID issues decreased, but nowadays they are, but it's not nearly like it was back then. Today it's more like the flu. Back then, they had COVID rooms, which meant I had to put on full protective gear, masks, gloves, the whole 9 yards. So nowadays it's definitely much different than it was 5 years ago. Really, everybody who worked during that time, not just interpreters, but doctors, nurses, everybody, bravo, hats off to them. All set? More questions? So I'm curious, you mentioned during your presentation that you're excited to see how the deaf interpreting field will evolve over time. I'm curious what your predictions for that look like. Primarily less resistance to deaf interpreters. More encouragement and expectation of having deaf interpreters present during interpreted interactions. More reliance on each other. I do think we're getting there, especially now because of social media. There's a lot more advocacy for deaf interpreting services. And it's much more prevalent and accessible nowadays. A lot of people are trying it out for the first time nowadays, and it's growing on them. Overall, interpreting resources are scarce all over, even at the hospital. Our staff I work typically overnights, 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. Me and a hearing teammate will work overnights, whereas most of the hearing staff are daytime workers. They work 8 to 5. Five to 9. Sometimes the doctors arrive really early and they don't have interpreters at the ready yet. The one downside is that 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. shift, you can't cover everything. just due to budgetary and financial constraints. It's very difficult to schedule between 1 and 5 a.m. You never know what's going to happen with ambulance services or emergency procedures, so that's why VRI can be essential during those hours. However, I do wish that we could have more face-to-face interpretation. A lot of the times, the VRI services, while necessary, are awkward, and it's just one downside that I've noticed while working at the hospital is our ability to provide coverage. But it's tough because we all have lives too, and so do they, so can't always make it work. I know it's not my responsibility, but is there anything I could do to help to improve my own presentation? Do you have any feedback for me? I want to check in with all of you. Is there anything I should do? The important thing is, as long as you didn't make me sound like a 5th grader, I'm okay with it. Or you don't make me sound like a woman. And again, honesty and transparency. That's a wrap, folks. Thank you all very much.